Hello, everyone, and welcome to this lovely panel, Stories Teens Will Be Captivated By, for the 20th anniversary of the Las Vegas Book Festival. And we're happy that you could all join us. I'm going to go ahead and have the authors introduce ourselves while our moderator is about to pop in. So, let's see, Lexi, I believe you are first on my screen. Well, yeah, everybody's shifting around a little bit. Go ahead. I'm going to have Lexi start since she's first on my screen for right now. So.
Hi, I'm Lexi Ryan. I'm probably best known for my contemporary romances, but I just had my first YA fantasy, These Hollow Vows, come out in July, and writing it was everything I hoped it would be. And so I'm really excited to be here and talk about my love of YA.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the book?
Sure. It's about a 17-year-old girl whose sister is, because of circumstances, sold to the king of the Unseelie. So it's a fairy world. And so she has to go to the fairy realm, and she makes a deal with the king. In order to get her sister back, she has to steal 3 relics from the Seelie kingdom. And in order to get into the kingdom and as close as she needs to be to do that, she has to pose as a potential bride for the Seelie prince. So it's kind of like Cruel Prince meets A Court of Thorns and Roses in The Selection. You can imagine that mishmash.
Okay. Yes, and I rave reviews. Everyone I know who's read it has just loved it. I've read lots of Lexi books, just not the. And then
not my fairies. You haven't read my fairies.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay, Diana, do you want to go next and tell us about your book and a little bit about you?
Sure. Hi, my name is Diana Ma, and I'm the author of the Daughters of the Dynasty series. And my first book was also my debut book in December 2020. So this is Eris, apparently, and it's the first book in the series. The series Daughters of the Dynasty follows the descendants of Wu Zetian, who was the only female regent of China. And yeah, so it's been fun to write. Eris apparently is a contemporary novel, and it follows a teenager, Gemma, who is an actress. And so she takes a gap year, she goes to LA, and she wants to make it as an actress. And her parents aren't really thrilled about it, but they're really not thrilled when she gets her big break. But she doesn't tell them where it's going to be because her parents' one big rule is never set foot in Beijing, the city of their birth. And she has no idea why. So she lies to them and she takes the role and she goes to Beijing. And so she's juggling keeping that from them and also figuring out, oh, they might have actually good reason for telling me never to go to China. And so what follows is a summer of love and mystery. And book 2, Her Rebel Highness, which follows her mother's story, is coming out in March.
Oh, yay. I absolutely love the book. So yay. It was great. It's great with a lot of the background. Oh, yeah. Cindy popped in. Cindy's going to be the moderator.
I can't get my thing to work.
She couldn't get hers on. So she's going to take over in just a minute. I'll just have you guys finish introducing yourself. So Tracy Wolff, take it away.
I am Tracy Wolff, and the series that I'm working on right now is the Crave series, which the 3rd book, Covet, is out, and the 4th book, Court, will be coming out very soon. And it is the story of Grace, a young girl from San Diego, which is my hometown. And she, after her parents died, she ends up at a boarding school that her uncle is headmaster of in Alaska. I wanted it to be a fish out of water story where she, really didn't have, any of her old life to rely on and really felt different and alone. And I couldn't imagine any place that I would feel more alone than the Alaskan wilderness. So I kind of plopped her down in the middle of Alaska. And once there, she realizes that there's a lot of things that aren't what they seem. And, is that a hot guy in the hallway of Vampire, maybe? along with a bunch of other things. There's dragons and witches and werewolves and the series has a much more fantasy element after the first book, but that's the basic premise.
Who's next? I don't know who's gone.
Stephan.
Stephan.
Oh, sorry. My name is Stephan Lee, and I'm the author of K-Pop Confidential. And it's about a Korean American teen named Candace Park who lives in New Jersey. And she kind of on a dare auditions for the K-pop company behind the biggest boy group in the world, who are looking for their first ever girl group. So she ends up flying to Korea to compete in a K-pop trainee facility, which I don't know if you know that much about those, but they're kind of like these very secretive, extremely competitive, like Hunger Games in real life type of environments. And she has to battle it out for a spot in the final group. And of course, there's a lot of conflict about dating, because in actual real life, the thing that'll get you kicked out of a K-pop trainee program is to date. Lots of really, really strict rules. And she has to question like her own self-worth. And there's lots of drama and hijinks, and you have to wonder whether she makes the group or not. But that's basically K-Pop Confidential, and the sequel comes out in April.
Like, I have like a few chapters left of K-Pop Confidential. Like, that's what I'm reading right now.
Sounds so good. My name is Sophia Gonzales, and I'm the author of Only Mostly Devastated, which is sort of like a gay Grease. Perfect on Paper, which came out this year, and it follows a bisexual girl who gives anonymous love advice through an abandoned locker at her school. And one day she's caught by a hot guy. He figures out that she's the one behind the locker. He blackmails her into becoming his personal dating coach to help him win his ex-girlfriend back. And in December, I actually got one more book coming out. So that's the second for this year. And it's called If This Gets Out. I'm co-authoring it with Cale Dietrich. And If This Gets Out is about America's biggest boy band. Two of the members happen to fall for each other and end up in a relationship, but they come to realize that their management team has no intention of letting them announce their relationship to the world ever.
I'm a huge One Direction fan, by the way.
I think you'll like this.
With the premise of that book.
Maybe we can talk. We can.
So, has everybody gone now? Everybody introduced themselves. So, my name is Cindy, and I was a bookseller for a long time, and now I have a bookstagram, Glass Castle Library on Instagram, and I am so excited to get to talk to you guys today. Although I left my phone in the other room with all my questions, so we're gonna try. So my friend had a suggestion for an icebreaker. You can, if you've ever had an embarrassing fangirl moment, fanboy moment, fan-personing, there we go, with another author that maybe admired when you started writing, or even now, or if you've gone to conventions or anything where you've met someone famous, describe it in 5 words or less. And I'll start. You can also say the person, because I'm not capable of using 5 words or less plus a name, in a name, right? So I cheated, and so the author is Sarah J. Maas. Crazy eyes, incessant nodding, smiling. That's how I met her. So now one of you guys 5 words or less. Everybody's got to have one. Come on.
I can go. Mine was Becky Albertalli. I cried. Now we're besties.
Oh, that's a good one, though.
That was 5.
So now we're besties. Yeah, you did good.
Yeah, thank you.
Also, you have amazing hair. by the way.
Oh, thank you. It's really lovely.
I'll go. I met Jenny Cruzy lots of years ago. That's probably Jennifer Cruzy, super popular romance author who just hasn't been publishing for the last 5-10 years. So I'd say mine was tried to sound smart, failed.
Mine was Nora Roberts, and 5 words. Paused mid-sentence. So much awkward.
Did you just like start staring and?
Oh yeah, I can't say anymore, but yes, so awkward.
My problem is picking from all my awkward moments. And limiting it to 5 words. Let's see, I'll try. I met Dorothy Allison once a long time ago, and at a book signing, and let's see, blushing, stammering. I can't do 5 words. I'm sorry. She said in her lovely Southern drawl after I had made a complete mess of myself. Oh, and I can't do it. She said, "Oh, aren't you just the sweetest?"
At least she didn't say "bless your heart."
She might have said that too.
Stephan, do you have one?
Oh gosh, I can't do 5 words either. Just counting and talking at the same time. But I'm gonna say R.L. Stine. It was a I think it was a Comic-Con panel, New York Comic-Con panel with Raina Telgemeier and Anna Martin, and I moderated, and it was cool. I would say we rode golf carts across the convention center together. And weird factoid, we were washing our hands, me and R.L. Stine were washing our hands together, and he cut his hand on a paper towel and was bleeding. And I was like, oh my God. So,
That's horror.
Yeah, so we had to get a Band-Aid. But that's it.
Well, let me rescue you, R.L. Stine. I can be your savior.
The thicker the paper with the paper cut, the worse it is. So I feel like a paper towel cut would be pretty intense.
Yeah.
Especially those, public bathroom paper towels. They're not soft. So obviously you guys all love to read, or that's probably what fostered your love for writing and writing books. So there's somebody in your life that fostered that love of reading for you when you were a child, or even if you started reading later in life, or is there somebody in your life that started that for you?
My mom was shoving books in my face from the time I could sit up. She had, put me in the zoo, and that's just one of the first books I remember reading. But Dr. Seuss, like all of them from the time, I was like 6 months old. And from then on, every Saturday she would take me to the bookstore when I got a little older. And she never said no if I wanted a book, no matter how many books I picked out. She never once told me no. We would come home with the stack this big, and then it would last like 2 weeks, and then we would go again.
We're really bad about taking books back to the library, but
oh yeah, no, we don't. Yeah, mine was the bookstore because
my kids know that's the thing I don't say no to. They know if they want a book, I'm not going to say no.
Oh, I love that.
I made my children like to read, so.
I liked the idea of reading more than I liked reading for a long time. Because when I was in 2nd grade, I was like, oh, I want to be a writer. And I loved the idea of being a writer. And I liked to write. Not that I was good at it, but I liked the idea of reading more than I didn't really get sucked into reading until I was in middle school. And honestly, for me, it was romance novels. Once I found romance novels, I was like, oh, I'm in.
Here we go.
And they were my safe space through, and I read everything now, but they were my safe space through some really awkward adolescent years.
Yeah. My dad used to read picture books and like The Faraway Tree to me every single night. I just constantly remember being in there. And I learned to read at like a weirdly young age, like super, super young.
Like really
And
one of those
so-
creepy kids that like, you're like, why is she reading already?
I used to read to the class in preschool, and like the teacher used to just take a break and make me do it. But like, because I started early, I kind of moved on like to books that, you know, really, really like grabbed me. Like Goosebumps is actually a really, you know, that was huge. Babysitter's Club, you know, in those first few years of primary school. And then by year 5, I was on to Stephen King, but I didn't know all of the words. So I'd ask like the teachers what some words meant, and then they would write home and ask my parents why I wanted to know what that meant. Yeah, sometimes you like get a bit ahead of yourself and you're like, well, I theoretically understand this. I just don't quite know what's going on.
It's like as thick as you are tall, like
Yeah, probably.
the Stephen King books.
Yeah.
I'm still terrified. Like I'm scared very easily. And I just remember Goosebumps was so scary for me. And all my kids, like, and I watched the TV show. I don't know, probably when I was like in middle school, maybe 4th, 5th, 6th grade. And it terrified me. That dummy episode, there's the one with the dummy. I don't know, like it's
Night
I think
of
it's
the
one of
Living
the first
Dummy, is
books
that it?
too.
Yeah.
It terrifies me. And I'm still afraid of it. And my kids, like, now they're like, you're afraid of Goosebumps? I'm like, yes. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I don't like scary things, and it's scary for me.
Fair enough.
I'm with you. That's the only time I watch them is when I'm watching with my kids and they laugh at me because I'm like, it's too scary. And they're like, it's not.
I have to be in the middle of the day with like all the lights on.
Yeah, that's me.
You're like, okay.
Yeah. I think I'm like Sophie in that like I started reading young, and I remember in pre-first, what we called kindergarten, you know, we had those challenges of like, you know, read 20 books this year, and I'm very motivated by that. Still to this day, I'm like tracking every book I read on Goodreads, and if I can't get credit for it, I'm like, oh god. But
What's the point?
Yeah,
I'll send
exactly.
you a gold star.
Yeah, and there's this other girl in the class, May Austin, who is a really good reader, and I like was very much in competition with her. And yeah, kind of like Sophie, I also realized I was like very snotty about this. I was like, just because a book is long doesn't make it harder to read. And I was like very on my high horse about this. And like,
Well, it's true.
so long. Oh, that's so hard. And I was like, no, it doesn't make it harder. It's just longer. So I was always very like proud and annoying about reading long books. So I remember I read this book called No Flying in the House. That was a chapter book, and I remember really bragging about it, like having finished it. But yeah, I was like all about reading.
I don't know that my parents were big readers, but they also took me to the library a lot, and they would let me get whatever I wanted. And I'm not sure what grade it was, but like Stephan, we had this competitive reading thing where they would give us a sticker for every book we read, and we were supposed to, on these like pink index cards, write a summary of the book, and then the teacher would put a little sticker on the pink card summary. And I got so motivated by competition that my teacher would just kind of sigh when I came up with all my pink cards, and she would pull out this roll of stickers that she bought just for me. She would just say, how many this time? She wouldn't even read the summaries. We're supposed to talk over them with her. And she'd like tear off 10 stickers and hand them to me, kind of like impatiently.
She's like, I don't have time for this.
Like, I do not have time to talk to this kid and her 10 books.
I want to talk to you about my 20 books.
What was that? Sorry?
But I want to talk to you about all my 20 books.
I know, I want to.
I'll stay back.
But also, I was just a really shy kid, and I didn't know how to talk to other kids. So when the other kids were playing on the playground or doing whatever kids supposedly do, I would just sit on the steps and read. So books saved me when I was a kid.
I had I feel like I know I've always read when I was younger, but I don't really remember like choosing books for myself until I think I was probably 11 or 12, and we were at my grandma's for the summer, and my grandma was raising my older cousin. I think she's 3 years older than me. So, and she was reading all the Sweet Valley High books, and I started like I picked one up off the shelf. She said I could read them, and I read, I don't know, 10 that day, a lot of them. And then I eventually in high school, I was getting the Sweet Valley University. They were coming out one a month, and it was $5.99 for the subscription, and I got my new one every month in the mail. And that's like, and then I did a challenge last February, and it was go back to the first book that made you love reading. And so I read Sweet Valley High #1, and it's not good.
Did not hold up.
I read it in about an hour and 15 minutes. It was so, I was like, man, I like read all of these, but I did read the Confidential where it revisited and you got to find out what happened to the Wakefield twins.
Oh, I loved those.
Yeah. That was really wonderful. So
the question is, like, was your copy the one where they had the perfect size 4 figures, or the copy where they had the perfect size 6 figures?
Ooh, I don't know. I know.
You know that will
mine were size 6. I remember.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
so that was like the earlier ones back when that was acceptable.
Yes.
Right. I also watched the TV show when I was in high school. It wasn't as good, but we did have a TV show for a little bit.
And a theme song.
So one of the things I just actually read an essay the other day that have my notes about it in the other room, but talking about who YA is for and who it's supposed to be for and who it's being like kind of marketed to a lot, and that we really need to get back to making YA for teenagers. I think it's so important that we have teenagers read, which is I make mine read. I'm not as successful now that they're teenagers, but when there's all these YA books that they're not really YA. They're written older and more experienced characters. How do you guys feel about that? Do you guys think that how do you guys feel about adults reading YA and what we should do to get more teens reading YA, what we can do to help? One of the essay was kind of about how it's always the marginalized authors and readers who are the ones who are affected when publishers are marketing to older, adults who have more disposable income and not teenagers. Even like pricing of books with some of the YA books that come out now.
I write These Hollow Vows. The series is mature YA, I guess is how they're marketing it. It's 14 plus because it has sexual content. But my big thing is because a book has sexual content does not mean that it's not for teens. I think it's really, and there are a lot of people who disagree with me, but I think it's really important that get them young and expose them to positive sexual relationships and sex positive characters. And I think sometimes we get in this mindset that just because, and I've seen it happen, even books that don't have a lot of sexual content, that just because they have gay content or LGBTQI plus content, that suddenly they say it's adult YA. And I'm looking at it and I don't see a reason. Like, I don't see a reason that this is about teenage characters, but only for adults. So I think in some cases it might be fear of the backlash that we can get from parents and maybe more conservative communities. If we say, yes, my book where 2 characters have healthy consensual sex and enjoy it is for teens. Like, I think maybe there's a little fear of that backlash. And so we say, well, it's YA, but it's adult YA, which is such a weird label. But for me, I think that we need both. I mean, I'm okay with people saying, my child isn't ready for this yet. My teen isn't ready for this yet. So it's not like I'm saying everyone needs to include it, right? Not every book needs to have sexual content, and not every reader wants that. But I am a big proponent of, get it in front of these kids, and let them figure out what they like to read and what resonates with them, and they'll figure it out.
Well, I think teens in general tend to. I was an English teacher for a long time.
Me too.
I think they tend to self-regulate in what they read more than they do in what they listen to or what they watch. I think it's very interesting, and I see it with my own teenagers. There was a book several years ago, Jay Asher's 13 Reasons Why. And I had read it right when it came out. And I think I had given it to my oldest son at that point. And he read like 2 chapters. And his answer to me was, "This is weird." And he put it down. He wasn't ready for it. He wasn't ready to deal with it. He wasn't ready to handle the issues that it described and that it dealt with. And I think that in general, teens tend to do the same thing across the board in books. They'll start a book, and if it's getting into things they don't want to, they just put it down. They're like, "Nah, I don't want to read this right now." It's not the same as very often like TV or movies that they watch. And I think that that's awesome. And I think that there are all kinds of teenagers out there, and there should be all kinds of books for them. Yes, representation matters, absolutely, and it is such a shame that marginalized authors and marginalized readers have had such struggles, and I think that getting their books of all kinds in front of readers is one of the most important missions in publishing today. But again, there are all kinds of readers in all walks of life, and a 13-year-old reader may not read what a 17-year-old reader wants to read, or a 12-year-old reader may not read what a 17-year-old reader wants to read. But they're both teenagers, and they're both YA, and they both have a right to have access to books that fit them and that feel right and feel comfortable to them. And I think one of the best things about writing YA, one of the things I love it because I come from romance like Lexi does, is the boundaries are wide open because they can always group you. You're in the YA section, so you can bend genres and you can write. I wrote a series of books with Tara Lynn Childs a long time ago. And she writes very young YA and I write very old YA. So blending those together was a really interesting experience for both of us. But we're both shelved right next to each other, in the YA section. So I think that it's good to have books with positive relationships with all sorts, for all kinds of readers, and all kinds of representation across the board. And I think I don't think there's anything wrong with ones with sexual relationships, ones that don't. I think teens need all of it, and then they can choose what they want to read.
Yeah.
And what they feel ready for.
My 11-year-old read Throne of Glass.
And I totally agree that actually that teens themselves are sometimes the biggest kind of I don't want to say police, but guardians over what they take in, because I'm a millennial, but I've gotten together with other millennial YA authors who are just like, "Oh my God, Gen Z kids are not as open-minded as we were because they don't like any sex. They don't like if a character does something wrong, they want them to instantly be punished, or it's just there's is this value system?" But I'm just that's how we were when we were younger, very right. We were "Oh, I hate this character," or "Oh, this book didn't end the way I wanted it to, so now I hate it." And I don't mind that kind of feedback, because that just it doesn't show that readers are closing themselves off to different experiences or characters who do things that they wouldn't do. It's just they're kind of learning to judge it, and I think that's really great and a good sign. And yeah, my book is actually considered clean teen. I can't even say frickin' or anything like that. And I actually was completely fine with it. When my editors were "Oh, we need to make these very scholastic book fair safe," I was okay, great. I think there are subversive parts in the book, or parts that appeal to could appeal to adults as well as kids, but being able to, if that means being able to get it to a wider audience,
Right.
I'm completely that.
I'm actually reading that right now, and I didn't even realize until you were talking that there's really not any sex or anything in it. Like, because I feel like that's not what the book, I mean, it's what it's about, and it's like, it's so fun, and it doesn't need it, it doesn't. I'm really liking it. I'm gonna go finish it when this is done. So
So when I think of YA, I think of less a small audience and more of anyone who wants to read about an 18-year-old. And that could be adults, that could be younger kids, that could be 18-year-olds. But I think that oftentimes one of the things I hear is, oh, Gemma seems too adult. And my main character, and I teach at a community college, and I see 18-year-olds all the time. And I'm thinking, really? Because the 18-year-olds I meet are amazing. They're sure of themselves. They're empowered. They have such sophisticated thought and insights about gender and sexuality and the world and race. And so I actually think that my character is an accurate representation of one 18-year-old. It doesn't mean that that's representative of all 18-year-olds. So I don't really understand this, oh, she reads too old critique, because I feel like there's such a range of 18-year-olds. It's not a monolithic set of characteristics. And then also, I do know one of the reasons I think that YA appeals to adults is that adults like me, who was raised without any people of color depicted in books and in children's books, or if they were depicted, it was by a white author. When I saw Asian characters, they were very, very flat and stereotypical, often a side character, barely mentioned. And so it's only as an adult that I've been able to read diverse children's books. So this is not something I had as a kid. So it's necessary for me as an adult to be able to see my childhood depicted and my teen years depicted in a way that it wasn't when I was actually a child or a teen.
When I was growing up, we weren't the kind of family that could go to the bookstore and grab a haul of books and come home, or I kind of didn't get to participate in the scholastic book fairs very often. So when I got a book, it was either the library or kids down the street were selling, or the school fete, or it would be like a birthday present. And I think I got maybe like 1 or 2 hardcovers in my entire childhood. And in Australia as well, books tend to be paperback much, much more than hardcover. A lot of the times we have to import them from overseas. We want hardcover. So I think it actually really surprised me when I came into the American market and saw, that hardcover is the default for a lot of books. That comes out first, and then, you get the paperback release later sometimes. And it makes me think, because the paperback books are at that lower price point. I think about the books that we were discussing earlier, like Goosebumps, Sweet Valley, Babysitter's Club, all those books that we would devour as teens. They were more accessible for families on budgets and kids who have pocket money. And then I also think, for me, I think of Only Mostly Devastated. It's what a lot of people would consider on the younger end of YA. I get a lot of that, oh, they were very young kind of thing. But I also noticed that my ebook sales were pretty much on par with my paper sales, like hardcover sales, which is not super common. And one thing that comes to mind is the kind of teens who would be reading this book would be the younger ones, and they would be the ones who would be much more able to afford an ebook versus a hardcover. And then in the UK, where it came out in paperback straight away, the sales were actually, we didn't see that effect at all. It was very, very, very much in favor of the actual physical book. It's just interesting to think about how those really expensive hardcovers and collecting that is something that I can now do as an adult with disposable income. Yay, lovely. I've got all these beautiful books, but I could never have done that as a kid.
Right.
And,
I think the Hunger Games prequel came out at $27.99, which is the same as an adult hardcover.
Yeah.
So, some of the article that I was reading too was talking about like mass market paperback teens, and I actually saw Brandon Sanderson's Reckoner series is at Barnes & Noble right now in mass market paperback. And I was like, there was mass markets in the teen section, and I was like, what are those? What are those doing right there? And it was the Reckoner series. I was like, these are so cool. Like, I wish more books would go to mass market for teens, and so they would have more. They're so much cheaper.
That is such an interesting point. Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
It's just such an interesting point because I hadn't really thought about it that way. And I was like you, it was the library. We went to the library. And then we had books that we owned. I'm the youngest of 7, so we had acquired some. But there was no like book budget. That wasn't a thing. We went to the library. So, which is probably a lot why I've become the mother that's like, yes, get all the books. That's fine. But I'm lucky my parents didn't have that choice, and I really think that it's easy as book lovers in maybe a more privileged economic position later in life to forget the economic part of who's buying our books and how.
Yeah.
So I like that you brought that up.
I guess it's just complicated because, you have like the New York Times hardcover list, which is so influential. And if you don't release a hardcover, you can't hit it. Yeah. And I'm pro adults reading young adult, absolutely. But, at the end of the day, factually, a lot of the profit in young adult does come from adult buyers. And publishers aren't going to magically ignore that. So the flow-on effect of that is that, well, adults can afford these hardcovers and it's greater profit. So therefore, we will do this and everything's great. And that does lead about a lot of teens. And I don't know what the solution to that would be.
Well, if you think about, like you'd mentioned the Hunger Games prequel coming out at $27.99, I'm just saying, I feel like, that probably would have been marketed to adults because it's been 10 years, right, since the Hunger Games came out and YA moved up. Not as a defense, just something that occurred to me.
No, that's true.
But I do. I think I thought that was so interesting. What you had said about these books having representation for the teenager that never had representation. Because a very good friend of mine had picked up, I believe the book, I believe it was Not Your Typical Mexican Daughter, and started crying. Like, I think it was like 4 chapters in, and had started crying because it was like, this was the book that I needed when I was a lesbian teenager, and nobody in my family understood me, and I was the only one that I knew. And it just broke my heart. So I think it's really exciting that the YA can offer that for people of all ages. I'm going to cry now. It just broke my heart.
That's I'm always recommending to my kids about which book I read, because I'm like, you should read this one. It reminds me of you, and they're like, how?
Yeah, representation is so incredible, and I think that if we can touch anybody at any age in that way, then I'm all for it.
It makes me think of my own children who are growing up in this wonderful, much more representative world of YA and children's books. And my 11-year-old, who probably wouldn't have read a YA romance on his own, but because I wrote it, he read Eris apparently. And I didn't actually think he would, but he got it from me. And then he read it in 2 days, and I asked him what he thought about it. And he said it was an empowering romance. It's just like, the best feedback ever.
Did you cry?
11-year-old kid who probably who has no interest in romance, but to talk about, to see himself as someone who can have an empowering romance one day, just made me tear up and cry.
Yeah, that's the other great thing about YA is that, like, you know, I think YA is really reflecting just, you know, the next generation of young people, and that, like, there's so much there should be a lot of queer representation. And, like, you know, I'm gay in real life, but in my novel, like, I think when people are like, is your book gay? And I'm like, well, I think it's gay in kind of like sensibility and like just like, there are no like explicitly gay characters per se, but I mean, there are gay characters, but I just didn't make it explicit. I just knew that they were in my mind. But then for the sequel, I'm like, oh yeah, like they're gonna be like, you know, the gay characters we're gonna explore them more. And my publisher's like, oh my god, thank God, you know, because it's just like, okay, if your book's not gay, there's a problem. You know what I mean? Because yeah, like I think it's like teenagers now like kind of expect it, and I think that's such a big reversal from what young adult and children's used to be.
Anybody else? Okay. I was like, can we stop? So some of these questions, like, you guys, I'm sure, get asked a lot, but let's see, what's your favorite place to write? Like, where do you sit down when you're starting a novel, or when you know you have words to write? Where is your favorite place to write at? Starbucks or desk?
Just on my bed.
On your bed.
I'm a bed writer too. It drives my editors are like absolutely insane. But I've written like so many of I think I've got 68 books out now, but like I think at least half of them, maybe more, have been written right just in the little pocket.
It's great.
So that's and funny, lately I've been writing in different spots. Like I think Crush was written at the dining room table, and Covet was written in my office, and then Court was just giving me such a hard time. I ended up back in bed, and as soon as I was back in my bed, it just kind of, you know, started flowing. So I think every book kind of decides where it wants to be written, but yeah, bed's my favorite place too.
I used to be a Starbucks writer. I
Pre-COVID.
miss being a Starbucks writer. As soon as it feels safe, I will be a Starbucks writer again.
My problem is I'm an extrovert, and if I go out to Starbucks, or if like my friends and I meet and we're gonna write, like all I want to do is talk. I just want to talk to people. There's people out there. There's people to talk to. Like, why would I want to sit here with my head in my computer if there are people out there I can speak to? So I have to be like locked up somewhere, because otherwise I'll just
socialize.
Not right.
So, where do you like to write? Or Diana?
Oh, sorry.
Either way.
So I wrote Eris Apparently and the sequel, Her Rebel Highness, and a middle grade novel that's coming out in 2023, extracurricular, during the pandemic, with 2 school-age children home doing virtual learning.
So in your closet.
Right, pretty much. I actually read this article that just came out. It was called the something like The Heartbreaking Ingenuity of the Mother Writer. And it was about all these writers who are writing, mothers who are writers writing in their bathrooms and their closets during pandemic times under a sheet, literally under a sheet, in their car, on the phone with Google Docs. And
I rented an office. I couldn't do it. Like, I just couldn't. Every 5 minutes, I just couldn't do it. So I would
juice, Mom. Can I tell you
leave
about Pokemon?
They're old enough. I just had to leave. I rented a closet, really, from someone, because I needed somewhere to go.
It was just
bad.
My writing space, I can't call it an office, but my writing space is a little area with a desk that's right between my 2 kids' bedrooms. And I mean, it's not that they each had their own bedroom, but everyone in the house had their own space with the door that they could close to write, except for me.
So, and so I was doing my, so I was teaching virtually in this space, having meetings virtually in this space, writing in this space, and it was just in this like open area where sometimes there would be literally a child or both of them hanging off my arms where I'm just like, let me just finish this scene before I lose it. Lose it in many different ways, but
Yeah.
I'm losing the scene. But I took the money from my book deals, and I don't know if you could see this, but I got a backyard writing shed built. It just got finished.
It's
This
a
is
she
my-
shed.
It's my first book panel in this space rather than the terrible
How
space that I had
cool.
before.
Congratulations.
Thank you, except that dinging is me. So I don't know how to stop it. I'm so sorry. Every time a text comes through, the ding happens. Anyway, so I'm very excited about this.
Yes, a room of her
That's
own.
wonderful.
Every writer needs one. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I feel like I'm always like in the search for like the perfect, most scenic, most bright like writing space possible. I have that like ideal in my head. But then like whenever I actually find one, like it's usually kind of like a long subway ride away from my apartment or whatever. And then I get this urge to like walk around when I'm writing, so that but you can't really do that in public. And then also like
Right.
I don't know, when you're writing in a cafe, yeah, cafe or a coffee shop, you have to like go to the bathroom, and I don't like asking people to watch my stuff, so I pack up everything and go into the bathroom, and then I lose my seat. And that so like I always end up just coming back to my apartment so I can pace around in circles and do whatever I want. So like yeah, but so it's been my goal to make my apartment as conducive, like the ideal writing space. So that's been kind of like a project this year. So yeah, painted and decorated.
We moved into our the house we live in right now in the end of January, and it is September, and I'm still working on my room and putting, because I wanted it to be this like perfect bookstagramable room, you know, like with my beautiful white shelves and all my pretty books and stuff. And I got a desk, and I was gonna like, it's a mess. There's boxes still everywhere. I have books all over the floor. Like 9 months. We're hopefully we sign another lease, because I don't really want to have to pack it all up yet since it's not done, but I guess we'll see. What I'm trying to think of something I wanted to talk about some more about the pandemic, just because I feel like it was such a, you know, it was still is, it's made your whole lives, your whole, you know, job and everything so different. Does anybody, so who all was home with children? Diana and Lexi and Tracy. Like at Stephan's face, he was like, "Oh, thank God."
Oh, it just yeah.
I was very glad that my kids are teenagers, and you know, I was initially mad because I didn't get to work from home. My office still made me go to work every day, and then I realized that I would have to be here at the house with my teenagers all day, every day, also trying to work. And I was like, never mind, I'll go to my office. It's fine. I don't mind.
I just want to say, I know so many people, mothers who work at home, who handled it with so much grace. And I did not. I don't want to get any credit for it. I did not handle it with grace. It was ugly. It was bad. So hats off to everyone who did it well. I don't deserve to be listed in their ranks. Like, we made it. Everyone, if
you're here now, you made it. You did a good job. Hopefully we don't go back to lockdowns. And So do you still have your office, Lexi, or are you just back at home?
No, I just moved out, which I feel like might have been, I told my friends, if our kids stop doing face-to-face learning, it's my fault, because I just moved out of that office space because they're supposed to be face-to-face learning this year. Yeah, so I'm worried that I jinxed it, but I have an office in my basement with a door. So in theory, I should be able to work here even when my children are home.
Locked in the
basement. In practice, maybe it didn't work out so great, but we're here.
What was the best book you read during the pandemic, or maybe a book that helped you like get through the pandemic? Or do we read too many that?
Minor Feelings by Kathy Park Hong. It's what the subtitle is, the explanation of what it is, but I can't remember what it's called. It's Asian American Reckoning in America, I believe is the subtitle. She is, it's the best book on race written by an Asian American author that I have read. She's a poet, and it shows.
Oh, wow. What's it called?
It's called Minor Feelings by Kathy Park Hong, and it was just, it validated everything I was feeling, and it said it so beautifully. It's nonfiction, and it's prose, so it's not, but you could tell her background as a poet because it's these little gems of scenes that she just puts together in a way that creates such emotional resonance. It's a beautiful book, and it got me through.
That's awesome.
Yeah, this isn't a specific. Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, this isn't a specific book, but I got really, really into audiobooks during the pandemic. Just because, I don't know, for all of 2020, I had a really hard time reading. And like, putting forth that kind of attention to like reading a physical book, but somehow audiobooks just kind of brought my reading self back to life. And now I'm obsessed. Like I'm kind of addicted. I just can't get enough. And yeah, that kind of got me through for sure.
Me too. I only listened to audiobooks for a big chunk of 2020. I couldn't read an actual book, but luckily that's back. I'm okay now.
I think that's so
actually, sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think that happened to so many of us. I think that's really interesting that we were just, I think, so fractured. I think actually through 2019 and everything that was going on there in America and 2020 in general, I had a really hard time reading. So yeah, audiobooks was definitely my form as well. What were you gonna say, Lexi? I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I've been an audiobook fan for quite a long time, but I was going to say, I don't know if I know how to fold laundry without an audiobook in my and I'm raising like audiobook things. So like, we're all terrible. I have a friend who's like, oh, I can't do audio when my family's around. That's just too rude to have something. I need to be available to them. Like, but there are 4 of us in this house, and we'll all walk around with our earbuds in if we're doing chores and stuff. And you start talking to each other. Oh, let me pause. Just like, that's just the way we function. But yeah, it just does little, it was actually world shifting stuff and really difficult time accepting the world around me that made me reach out to fantasy beyond just writing contemporary romance and feeling like I needed that. I needed to be able to go after the big bad because I felt so helpless against the big bad here. And, because I've written over 30 contemporary romance titles and finally felt like I had my footing in that genre. Like finally, okay, now I'm going to step and do something completely different, which is scary. It's terrifying because it's tough enough to make your way in one genre in this career. But I needed it, like, and maybe that's why it worked. Is because like when we write what we need to write, it tends to really do good things.
Yes, that is actually, These Hollow Vows is one of my favorite books that I have ever read. But I mean, Lexi can tell you, I literally messaged her like many times, like about the characters, and I'm so glad you decided to write YA fantasies. So
Thank you.
I read These Deadly Games by Diana Urban. That was awesome. That's like, have you ever seen the episode of Black Mirror that's Shut Up and Dance? Where, well, it's very similar to that.
That show freaks me out too.
Oh, I love it. The book's about a girl who receives a message from an anonymous person with a video of her sister. They've kidnapped her, and she has to do everything that they say or they're going to kill her. And the tasks escalate in difficulty, and they all involve her targeting her friends.
Oh, wow.
Okay. I think I have that in my room.
Yeah?
Yes.
You should read it.
I read her other book. Oh my gosh, what's it called? But
Your Twisted Secrets.
Yes. So I think it was like Barnes and Noble book club pick, and I used to do the book club or something. I don't know. But or maybe that book is coming in a book box, because I know that it's on its way to me. I'm pretty positive. Because I loved her first one that I read. So
awesome.
My favorite book from quarantine. Oh, no.
But
I was going to say my favorite book from quarantine, but if you want to move on, I will.
No, I didn't. You go, please tell me.
Oh, no, my favorite book from quarantine was actually by a New Zealand writer who I am a gigantic fan of. Her name is Nalini Singh. And she wrote her first romantic suspense called A Madness of Sunshine. And it was, at the edge of the world. And it was brilliant. And I think I read it I finished it and then I read it again just because I wanted to see everything that I'd missed, because I'd gone through so fast. I wanted to know it was a romantic suspense. I want to know who did it. And it was brilliant. And and that was one of the few books that I had read in paper versus on audio during the pandemic.
Final question. If you were stranded on a desert island, what fictional character would you take with you from a book? Would you want with you to help you survive?
To help me survive or to entertain me, Cindy?
So mine,
Those are very different answers.
I would take Aelin Galathynius from Throne of Glass, because I feel like we would have the best time, and she would also come up with plans and save my life. You could either be entertained while you are still living, or somebody that will help you survive.
Someone magic. Someone who can fly. Someone who can fly me home.
Can't wish for more wishes.
I can wish to be flown home.
So Peter Pan.
Okay, Peter Pan. That's a good one.
Yeah, but I think you're onto something. Definitely a magical character, because I'm not roughing it. I don't mosquitoes.
Oh no, you'd be glamping. Yeah, that's you would be glamping. It's a deserted island, but it was previously inhabited.
Is there a KFC?
That just reminded me of Stephan's book, because KFC is Korean fried chicken, right? That was what she was. Yeah. She was just eating that in the book right now. So.
This is so hard. I would definitely go for the entertainment factor, because I don't know. I feel like if I were in a survival situation, I would immediately kind of give up and just go for enjoying myself. Yeah.
Some of us aren't built for the zombie apocalypse.
Not who you want. My partner is watching that show Alone, right? Which is they drop you in the middle of the Arctic Circle or the Alaskan wilderness for 100 days, and you have to survive. I'm like, why? Surely there is an easier way to make $1 million. I don't know what it is, but surely there is an easier. As one is on the screen, as I was getting ready, somebody got bit by a squirrel. And I was like, no, this is not okay. Like, is that a rabbit squirrel? Like, I am not who you want with you during any sort of interaction like this. Or zombie apocalypse. I'm like the nature of the zombies. Just make sure I'm really dead. Don't let me be a zombie, and we're good.
Yep, I have a deal with my husband that like zombie apocalypse, just take me out early.
Let me go.
I'm not here for
it. My ex-husband told me he would take me out so he could save the children. I was like, thanks.
I'm okay with that. Feel free. I don't want to live through it anyway.
I'm not here. I don't want it. I don't want it.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I would take.
So dark.
Oh yeah.
Person, but she has written books and she is a character in them. And I think we would just talk about food, make jokes, and then just.
You would have the best time.
Yeah.
That's a really good choice.
Yeah, it would be the best time. Well, I thank you guys so much for taking it. Let me give you back to Crystal real quick.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Do you guys? I want you all to hold up your books one more time so everyone can see them. So we've got Diana Ma with Heiress Apparently. We've got Lexi Ryan, These Hollow Vows. Sophia Gonzales with Several. Only Most Devastated was just like one of my favorite books ever. Stephan, I love K-Pop Confidential. It was so good. Tracy, Wolff with Crave. All these great books. Thank you all for being here. I did want to mention Julian Winters was going to join us, and then there was a scheduling conflict, which couldn't be here. But I just want to mention how great I love Julian. Their books are amazing. I just want to mention The Summer of
Everything is absolutely freaking amazing. Oh my gosh, it's so good.
Yeah.
So
I just want to shout out Julian because they're one of my favorite people and they couldn't be here, but check out their books anyway. And check out all these books. Thank you all for being here. It was wonderful to talk to all of you and meet you even virtually. Hopefully I'll meet you all in person one day. Thank you.
That would be lovely.
Thank you, Crystal.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, Cindy, for moderating.
All of you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.